I will now pass on the word to Michelle Durocher of Harvard University. She's responsible of the cataloging and production program over there. She will do the moderating. I'm just here to spot questions from the audience at Brussels.
Thank you, Anne. And thank you, Frida, Caroline, and Jenny for your great presentations. One of the things that struck me while listening to the three presentations was just the commonalities in terms of the challenges that are trying to be solved, the efficiency-related workflow needs, the automation just to deal with the scale of operations. I wondered, and maybe we can get an answer from each of the presenters to this question as we wait to see if there are questions from attendees in the chat or in person in Brussels. What are the challenges that you find to have publishers participate in an ISNI-based workflow? Are you still at that point of needing to convince and cajole and explain the value? Or are we past that important hurdle at this point? Who might want to comment on that?
How do you want someone to start, or do you want to call on us? Or what
Caroline, if you want, go ahead.
Yes, Caroline.
So in terms of encouraging publisher participation, ours is still a somewhat passive approach in the SIP program because we do receive so many requests. We have the information available on our website. If publishers want to look up the SIP program about ISNI, we have the link, as I said, or the text box. I don't think what we're doing right now is a long-term sustainable process, right? It needs to come more from a cycle of it's in Onyx, we add it that way. Another piece of it, though, is how do we encourage publishers to have an ISNI to include in their Onyx? How do we encourage more publishers to submit their Onyx? As we get a lot, but we don't get it from every publisher. I don't know. Surely most publishers have Onyx. How do they get their books sold on public websites without it? So it's not an easy process. Part of it is advocacy. As I said, sitting in the Book Industry Study Group Metadata Committee and sort of having these conversations. Encouraging those publishers to talk with their colleagues about the importance of ISNI. So we're not at the stage where we can't be talking about it, but we're not at the stage where we're actively talking about it. If that makes sense. It's sort of it's a little bit of, we need to do more, but we can't always do more, but we need publishers to know more. But yeah, so that's where we are right now. Automation, I think, is a key factor. Yeah, we're not there yet.
Somewhere on the path. Jenny, might you have any comments on where you see the BDS publisher relationship related to ISNI? If Jenny is not available to comment immediately, Frida.
No, I'm here. I just was trying to get a microphone to work. The approach at BDS to date has been to smooth the path for publishers and make few demands on them. Just give us your Onyx, we'll sort it all out from there, because they are far more interested in the trade sector where they see their volume of sales. And we don't have the track record in the British publishing system of placing demands on publishers when it comes to submitting metadata to national institutions. So it's a slightly different approach from the likes of BNF or other places can do. But what we do see is publishers getting interested in ISNIs. So I foresee that BDS will be able to provide a service back to them whereby we can say, okay, you've got this proprietary ID for that author. We can tell you the ISNI is such and such. You will now be able to use that in your workflows, and that will benefit you going forward. Exactly how that will be paid for, etc., is all to be determined. But I think the move is positive, and I think that the argument is largely won. It's just a question of the economic specifics that are still to be worked on.
Thank you. It sounds like definite progress in the last short while.
Yeah.
Frida, do you have any comment on that topic as well?
Yes, I think the work with the ISNI is similar and a bit different to all our work with metadata, because Bokbasen is working with all parties in the we often reach this point where the publishers, they don't want to spend time adding information into the metadata records because the retailers don't display it. And the retailers don't want to implement support because there is no content in the metadata field, so they get nothing out of it. So this is what we are working with all the time, trying to get someone to start using it. And with ISNI in particular, it has been a bit easier since we could get the ISNIs from the National Library's file also. And the pilot they have started with the one large publisher now, with the publisher being able to request ISNI for new authors, I think is very useful. And I think the other publishers will follow when they see that this is going to be a success, because I think it will be. And it will also ease how they can provide metadata about the author to us, because this is a bit difficult now when you are not using the same identifier. It's a bit difficult to add pictures and interviews and links and etc. about the author. So, but it's small steps.
Thank you. Yes, it's interesting to recognize that important role of the National Library in the different country contexts as a metadata provider, or the agents of the National Library, as in the case of BDS. Another one of the themes that seemed to come out in the three presentations was just the role of technology in facilitating this workflow and being such an important just reality maker in a way of we all are struggling with the staffing models, never being enough individuals to do the work manually. Those days are gone. Automation is key. Do you, any of you, do you see an opportunity for a more shared system that maybe is a gap in a workflow, that if a shared system could exist between ISNI and publishers, or between ISNI and library workflows, that some pooled resources might come to bear to fill that technology gap? I'm just struck by how much individual development there is in each of the workflow contexts. Is there an opportunity that you've ever thought of, like, oh, if only I had that little system in this part of the workflow?
I mean, I'm very jealous of the National Library of France with their process for getting the ISNI. And so, yes, I mean, definitely I see opportunities, potential opportunities. It's always challenging with, you know, the priorities of the larger organization. So where the benefit could help with the, you know, workflow, trying to have that become a priority for the larger sort of organization, and the funding resources and all of that is always sort of the challenge and the question of how to move those things forward. And it's interesting looking at the way BDS, for instance, has their SIP workflow versus how we do our workflow. Even though the quantities of work coming in are, parallel in many ways. And yet, as a private agency, for instance, what you're able to do with technology is perhaps different than a public entity such as, a government agency.
We always have far more ideas about how to improve things than we have IT capacity to
Yeah.
make work. It's not so different from you.
Are there any questions from the audience in Brussels?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, I wonder, how about questions among the presenters for each other? Did some of what you heard from others on this panel just really strike a chord of either commonality that perhaps we should, zero in some effort to, look for some shared opportunity to help each other?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I would love to spend more time talking with Jenny, for instance, about the workflow that you have, and see what we could take from that, or if there was something that you would want to take in your SIP workflow. Because, I mean, the ultimate goal, of course, is the publisher. On the one hand, getting publisher metadata to a publisher or vendor workflow and the use of libraries. For us, it's also the book coming in to the libraries for the library's collection. So it's a two-pronged sort of goal for us. But it's always a good idea, I think, to sort of see when you have a situation like a SIP workflow that two different places are doing it very differently, how could they be maybe more in sync with each other? That would be interesting to me.
Our discussions internally on how to improve workflow are usually, well, many and various, but one of the more recent ones has been addressing prioritisation and making sure we're really focusing on achieving the best outcomes that we can for our customers, given that it's pretty well impossible to create a record for everything being published all the time, because there's just too much. We have a question from the floor.
Yeah, may I ask one? Yeah, thanks. So I was wondering what I also have seen before, for instance, I think in the previous session from Quebec, that there was also like a workflow developed to like search via ISNI SRU and then like get a record and then looking, is the record we wanted to create, does it already exist? If not, we use the Atom API to create it. And I have seen something similar in one of your presentations, that you're also trying to get that workflow running. I know that we are internally also working on scripts with the same kind of purpose, where we would like to send the requests to create new ISNIs based on the API to make that more quick. We don't yet, I think, have a step to have the... It's working. Yeah, it's working. No, but I mean the other part was first checking with the SRU, does it exist? And then, so for me, that's a bit more the tooling around it. So we have the nice building blocks, the API to search and to create records. But I'm wondering if there is anything in the ISNI world, like with all the community groups and so on, like some efforts to create a tool around the APIs where all these processes could be made more, more easy with maybe a small user interface, something based on CSV, something very simple, which could be reused.
I think in line with what Sven is asking, if we would provide something to convert the ISNI XML to Onyx, and at BNF they are capable of taking the ISNI out of the ISNI XML and then integrate it in the Onyx files to feed them back to the publishers, then I think that would be an ideal solution. I don't know if Vincent wants to intervene on this, or some of the panelists.
Yes, we already do this. We provide, because some of the publishers are getting records back from us, and then we provide the ISNI to them, if I understand it correctly, what you asked for. And we also have it's sort of semi-automated requests for adding and updating records in the authority file. So, but yeah.
I'd be curious to know how you get that data back.
Vincent is going to respond from the floor.
Yes, just to make it clear that at the National Library of France, we have a mapping from Onyx to MARC and from MARC to AtomPub, the AtomPub XML request scheme, and the way back, I would say. But I think that the main thing, if we talk about the technical issues, is to be clear on what data we do need to make sure that the assignment of ISNI works well, and to make sure that, for instance, we have the data meet the requirements to assign trustworthy ISNI. And this is the work we are doing with the book supply chain and publishers in France to give them the idea of what data they do need if we want to have a trustworthy ISNI. I think it is the major part of the work.
And if I may add something, we at KBR you use a Python script to change our Mark 21 authority records to ISNI XML records to use them in the API of ISNI. And I think, Sven, you meant maybe if everyone uses the same type of MARC records or records and everybody uses the same API, we can share this type of scripts or create something that's useful for all of us because we're all using the same API, or in the same way we all want to request ISNIs via the API. We all want to transfer with publishers or with commercial institutions. I don't know. So that may be a way here today to start a better collaboration or more further collaboration.
Yeah, perhaps we can consider setting up an ISNI GitHub where we can share the codes so that we can reuse it from each other. That would be an idea, perhaps.
There's another question at the back of the room.
Fabi? Ah.
Yeah. I can just about see.
Thanks, Hannes.
Getting there.
I have perhaps a more practical question. In Belgium, we have some, perhaps some, it's not problem, it's some difficult to convince the book chain stakeholders to convince to use the ISNI. Did you have some advice to help us to convince the different stakeholders to use that and to be integrated in the book chain in KBR, for example?
Well, the classic example in the UK is that a major publisher once gave the royalty check to the wrong author because they had the same name as one of their other authors. So there are definitely ways to make them see how important it is to have unique identities.
Yes, and also in Norway, where the retailers provide books not just from Norway, they have seen the benefit of an international identifier so they can merge metadata from different sources and languages and countries. Yeah. And the royalty is important, as Jenny said.
Again, in the United States, it's also a similar situation where we're having to convince publishers. Many of them are aware of it, not all. And the struggle in that I see in the Book Industry Study Group Metadata Committee is if it's not simple for them to see the positive impact of adding something to their workflow, then it makes it a little more challenging to encourage them to do it. So, but it's a process. We're continuing the fight.
One of the analogies that I think is valuable to bring up when talking with publishers is the transformative impact of the ISBN in the same family of identifiers as the ISNI. The ISBN has, driven so many sales via online retail, just the discovery component of how ISBN fits in the metadata for discovery. So I think there are some maybe stories to tell that can hit home.
I think one of the things that has also improved publishers' awareness is the digital shift, because the ability for publishers to be sending their publications directly to the British Library as digital legal deposit means that there is at least an initial metadata delivery before the intervention of library standards, which they're getting feedback on and making it, they're becoming more acquainted with the needs of the library market. More and more publishers are dealing directly with libraries because of their digital content, and I think that is improving the conversation.
Well, on that note, I think we are done for the day.
Yes,
I will
thank you.
turn back over to Anne to wrap up on site. Thank you all, Frida, Jenny, and Caroline.